This is St. George's Castle or Elmina Castle. It is the biggest and the oldest in the world when you talk of transatlantic slave trade. It was built by the Portuguese in 1482, and to them they had two reasons basically why they built it. One for trade and two for missionary work. Initially, we were trading in gold, in ivory, and later spices. So all the rooms on the ground floor were being used as storerooms or warehouses. However, in the early 16th centuries, it shifted from the gold and others to human trade. And when it got started, the same storerooms were then transformed or converted to holding cells or dungeons where the Africans were kept. In total, the castle had a minimum of 1,000 captives at a time. This section of the castle was the female section. We're talking of 400 people here at the time. Now, we need to understand that when the Portuguese and the Dutch came over here to trade, most of them never brought their wives. Over here also, they could not stay without them. So the governors, the soldiers, the traders kept on abusing the women here in the dungeons. And whenever the governor wanted, because of his position, he just came and stood up on the balcony there and ordered. Women were taken from the dungeons all over here to this courtyard. So from there, he just looked through and then made his choice. The woman chosen could have stayed in the dungeons for a whole month. And all the time in there was not a single occasion she could clean her teeth. She never took a bath or bathing. She had gone through the menstrual cycle. Yet she's the one chosen by the governor. So then it became the responsibility of the soldiers to clean her. How did they do it? They fetched water from the cistern. They washed the woman at the center of the courtyard, whilst all women from the dungeons looked on. After the humiliation, she was dressed up, given something to eat, and she was taken up the stairs there. We call it the private access to the governor's bedroom. After the governor had used her in most cases, he never stayed with her. So after, she was brought back to the dungeons. Instances, the story says that before the woman moved from the governor's place to the dungeons, soldiers bringing her had taken advantage of her. So the least we could say is that before she got back, she could have been used by several men. And those that became pregnant were subsequently freed or liberated. We need to understand they came not only from today's what is known to be Ghana alone, but also from entire West African sub-region. So that when the woman was free, she could not move back to where she came from. Secondly, the Europeans never wanted their own babies to go wayward or astray. So some houses were built here in the town where those found pregnant were kept. And here now in Elmina, we are still having people bearing names like Da Costa, Da Silva, De Vere, Vroom, Smith, Hutchison, Peterson, and such other European names. Here is a cannonball. 8 of such were all over here before. Each one of them had chains on it. And they were used to punish the women who to them were very difficult to handle. And in those days, when they said the woman was difficult, in most cases, she refused or resisted from a soldier. So for refusing or resisting, she was pulled out of the dungeons to the courtyard, chained to the ankles or the legs with 2 cannonballs. And be it rain or shine, she was made to stand in it for as long as they wanted, no food as punishment. Except these 2 cells over here, all other rooms on the ground floor were the holding places for male captives. And at the time, this section of the castle had 600 men. On top of the dungeons all around were the residences for the soldiers, the traders, and the pastors. On top of them also, we had the deputy governor, and then on top, the governor. So basically suggesting that the importance the person was perceived to have been, the higher up he lived. At the center of the courtyard, we have the church for the Portuguese. It was called St. George's Catholic Church. When the Dutch came over, they divided the church into 2. They used the top as a soldiers' mess where they were eating and drinking, and the down there, the hall of trade, where people were auctioned or were sold. Of the 2 cells, the first was for the European soldiers, those who got drunk and misbehaved. They were put in there for some time and they were freed. And the next one with the skull and the crossbones was the condemned cell, and that was for Africans in the dungeons who were fighting for freedom. So the leaders of the freedom fighters were captured and put in there, no food, no water until death. And when anyone died, they just went in for the body, threw it into the sea. The whole idea was to serve as deterrent to those in the dungeons. When one was in there alive, the next person could be there dead. And until the soldiers had gone in for the dead one, the one alive had no choice but to be buried. Instances, you see body show signs of decomposing. Instances, one alive will be there with the dead one until he also died.